synchrony predicted social connection with your peers, but also the amount of exertion predicted social connection too.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Krissy Vann. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. Welcome to our third edition of Exercise Snacks Bite-Sized Science. Every other Monday, we explore the latest science and research directly from the scientists and researchers themselves. Today, we hear from Laura Cirelli, who's the director of the Tempo Lab at the University of Toronto. Her PhD work focused on the social effects of musical engagement during infancy. So what does that have to do with fitness? Well, Laura's research has explored what happens to our social bonds when we move in sync with others. So on this episode, we're going to explore how those findings may translate to the benefits of group fitness classes. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes every Wednesday featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Krissy Vann, and this is ATFW. I am so grateful to have you here today, and I'm really fascinated to learn about how your research might apply to what we are doing in our fitness spaces. So first, explain to people what your area of focus has been throughout your career.
Yeah, sure. So here at U of T, I'm the director of the Tempo Lab, where we generally study how babies and young children engage with music as sort of the big umbrella. But we think about that in terms of how they're hearing music, whether they're predicting the next beat, whether they're dancing along, but also how they're connecting with others socially and emotionally when they're engaging in musical behaviors. So, I mean, I think that we don't study fitness, but certainly a lot of fitness routines involve moving together with other people. Usually there's music in the background, and one of the real first passions and rabbit holes that I went down in my research had to do with how moving in synchrony with other people affects how they feel about one another. Basically, with that research, what we were doing is looking at how if you move in or out of synchrony with a toddler, like a 14-month-old, how does that actually change how they feel about you? Do they like you more if you move in sync with them, for example? And that was risky. Like, nobody had done this with babies before. There was some cool papers coming out at the time with adults and with older kids, but if this is something that's really like fundamental to social cognition, then we felt that pretty early in life. And we know that babies are engaging in musical activities really early in life, and music is a really great context where you can align your movements with other people.
So how did you conduct the study, and what were the findings?
Yeah, so we invited families. This was at McMaster University when I was doing my graduate work, and we invited families to bring their toddlers into the lab. So these were 14-month-old babies. And what we would do is we would have the lead experimenter holding the baby in like a forward-facing carrier, and they would gently bounce the baby to the beat of Twist and Shout that was playing in the background. But the main thing that happened was that another experimenter would be facing the baby, and this person would either be moving in synchrony with how that person and the baby were bouncing, or they'd be moving like too quickly or too slowly, so their movements just don't align with what the baby's experiencing, and they're facing each other, so the baby can see very clearly if this person's moving with them or not with them. So that was like about 2.5 minutes long, and then we would take the babies out of the carriers, and the experimenter who had been moving either in or out of sync would now do these little social tasks with the baby, where they would pin dishcloths up on a clothesline or draw a picture with markers, and then accidentally drop those objects that they need to complete the task. So the really cool thing that we were looking for is like, what do babies do in this ambiguous situation? They just met this person, they had some experience with them, and now that person needs help. So does the baby recognize that need, and also importantly, take it upon themselves to actually be the one to toddle over, pick that object up, and hand it back to this experimenter? So what we found in that study, and then in some replications as well, was that if we moved in synchrony with the babies, they would hand back over half of those dropped objects. But if it had been an out of synchrony experience, they would hand back like less than a third of those objects. And so there was a significant jump in how willing they were to engage socially and actually help this person, depending on their previous in or out of sync experience.
So it really speaks to a human connection happening there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to measure with those helping tasks. I mean, you can measure human connection in a whole bunch of different ways. This one specifically is like targeting helping behavior, but you want to help people that you want to be affiliated with and that you're willing to approach and that you feel connected with in some way. So that was our proxy for affiliation.
Well, and another study that I was looking at that I thought was so fascinating was our relationship with musical beat. And I know that there was some work done when it came with infants and musical beat. So tell me about our relationship when we hear the beat of music, because it was something like a live performance versus virtual. And
Mm.
all of a sudden, everyone, even it was like the measurements that you were getting were all of a sudden pairing with the other infants, which seemed a little mind boggling.
Oh, you're talking about the baby opera? Is that
Yes.
what Yeah, so that was really fun. We a little bit crazy, but we actually were
Love
collaborating
crazy.
with yeah, we collaborated with some musicians in Toronto who were putting together an opera for babies. And so we invited a whole bunch of babies to come into a facility called the Live Lab, which is a really cool concert hall slash research laboratory. So it's a stage with 100 seats, but also we can measure heart rate from a whole bunch of the participants. You could, if you wanted to, measure motion capture and get responses from tablets and do a whole bunch of other fancy things. But we stuck with heart rate, and we also had recorded a video of every single baby using like a tablet mounted to the chair in front of them, turned away so they didn't see themselves, of course. But yeah, so what we did is we had a whole bunch of babies come in and watch this musical performance on the stage. And we recorded that performance and then we showed it to a new group of babies at a different time. So now we had babies who watched the live version of the performance and babies who watched the recorded version of the performance in the same space. But the cool thing with the recorded performance was like we used this huge projector so we could project the video at life size. So like the musicians looked visually similar. And we were able to use really high level audio control in that space to give them a very similar acoustic experience as well. So anyway, the question is like, how do they engage in live versus recorded? They watched a lot more if it was live than if it was recorded. And also the quality of their watching was different. Like they would have sustained attention. They wouldn't be as distracted. Like if they looked for 10 seconds, they looked solidly for 10 seconds. They weren't looking away every little bit of time. But the heart rate thing that you're talking about was that we found that the babies' fluctuations in their heart rate were more aligned with one another if they were watching that synchronous performance together compared to the babies in the recorded performance. So watching that synchronous performance made them feel more connected to their fellow baby audience members, if you will.
Well, and the reason why I kind of brought that one up is because obviously we're approaching this from a group fitness perspective over here. There's been a big rise in people seeking out that social connection once doors were opened once again in these spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me so curious. And I know that your area of research isn't focused on adults, but knowing that, like, I think of somebody that's either virtually doing their workout on a Peloton versus having the opportunity to be in a space with other individuals and moving in sync. What would kind of
Yeah.
be your opinion on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if both are equally feasible, like for some people, of course, the Peloton thing is going to be the only thing they can squeeze into their day, right? But if you could choose, if you have the option, there's definitely something to be said about that live in-person element that you just can't capture in a situation where you're like alone watching a pre-recorded video on a screen. Um, and there's adult research showing too that just like the way that you can learn and engage with live video even is more than pre-recorded video. So I think there's kind of two things, like with the live piece. If you're physically there in person, then you're connecting with your fellow exercisers. And the work I've done on moving in synchrony suggests that if you're like cycling together, like going up the hill fast together and down the hill slow together, then you are moving in synchrony with each other and connecting that way. And there actually was a really cool paper, maybe even more directly related to this idea with adults, that was looking at like really like a dance fitness context. And it was synchrony predicted social connection with your with your peers, but also the amount of exertion predicted social connection too. So it was like being together and exerting yourself together, both independently made you feel like you're part of this bigger thing, and had that relationship. And I mean, I think the reason why exercise programs that harness that are so successful is because then you get this, you're not just there for the fitness, you're there for the community, and the community pushes you to try harder and keep showing up. And like that accountability is something that is really hard to push on yourself. So without the community, you alone are responsible for the accountability, and then it's just that much harder to achieve.
I mean, I think social wellness is a factor that we talk about more and more, especially after
Yeah.
what we've all collectively been through.
Right. Yeah. I mean, social wellness is huge, right? Like even if you look at studies with older adults who have close friendships live longer. Like it's directly related to our well-being, because our emotional well-being just feeds right into our physical well-being. And people who have even older adults who are isolated, if they have access to video chat so they can connect virtually with their friends and family in a synchronous capacity, they fare a lot better on these well-being measures than people who don't have that available to them. So yeah, we're super social creatures. Like social attachment is something that is like ever present across the lifespan. And yeah, when we're socially isolated, we are not in optimal states of well-being.
I am somebody, I just was actually writing an article about the trends for 2024, one of which is the revival of classic aerobic step workouts with a retro twist, which means more people moving in sync. So what are some of the other benefits if people are in these motions together?
So like, why does synchrony make us like people? Is that kind of what you're getting
at?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think we have all the answers, but one of the cool ideas is that it's linked to endorphin release, actually. Like if you see someone else moving with you, so after experiencing synchrony with another person, adults actually have a higher pain threshold. So like they'll leave their hand in a bucket of ice water longer if they just had a synchronous movement experience with someone. Yeah, so it could actually be like endorphin releasing. It could change your pain threshold. Like, I guess you can push through when you feel the burn in that aerobics fitness class a little harder. But yeah, it also, in terms of, we see this social element, I think that is probably more related to this idea of like a shared goal. Like you're sharing this goal with this person, it makes them seem more like you, more likely to be part of your social group. And humans are kind of wired to like the people that are like them. So I think that's potentially a mechanism for the social element, although there's, different ideas about that.
Well, I really appreciate you shedding a little bit of light on the research and your expertise. And I just think it's really fascinating that a lot of these benefits, I mean, obviously research needs to be done, but it does feel like something very innate as human beings, and just that benefit and the craving to kind of move together, have shared experiences. And again, after the last few years, even more so, I think it's incredibly important to open ourselves up to those experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Krissy. That was fun.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Krissy Vann. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.